Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
So it's AAPI month. We have a few exciting, we tried to work it out. We were saying that if you've been listening recently, there are some amazing adaptations of, and we have such a selection of different cultures to choose from. But a lot of the books that have been adapted, at least for an American audience, are massive tomes. So this month we're focusing on Chinese culture, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And so Margot has done a good job. The other Margot has done a good job of figuring out like how we can kind of pace ourselves and actually do a little more coverage than we thought we could. So today is one of those examples, and we'll get to that in just a minute. If you're new to Book versus Movie, something you should know is that we have been doing a brand new episode every single week since the pandemic has started. So over 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And that means that sometimes we have to choose shorter literary sources because it is hard to get through 300 pages in 1 week when you have a life. Mm-hmm. Now, that means also that we are always looking for ideas. It is also difficult to come up with 52 ideas for books and movies that we want to cover. So there's lots of places where you can give us suggestions, meet other listeners of this podcast, and interact with both of us on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. All the episodes are posted there, and you can reach out to us there. That's totally fine. But we're more interactive in our Facebook group. One of our listeners, Margot, is having a birthday party, and he's going to the place where they filmed Somewhere in Time, which is a book and a movie. And he's been posting He's been posting pictures in there, and everybody's been commenting on it. We have like the nicest group.
Seriously, it's a very nice group.
We just talk about books and movies there. And so what you do is you type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group, ask to join, come on in. We're always looking for suggestions. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Please be sure to follow us there if you use those apps. We have a very basic old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it out at gmail.com. And we try to keep the literary sources. That could be a book. It could be a novella. It could be a song. Trust me, a poem. We've done magazine articles, anything. That has to be pretty easy to be able to get. Plus, the movie has to be streaming on a major service. So if it's like a DVD we have to buy from Canada or something, like it's just not, it just doesn't work with what we're doing. So try to keep that in mind when you're offering suggestions. Also, if you would like some stickers, we do have stickers. Just send us your address in an email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com, and we will drop them in the mail for you.
That's right. And if you really enjoy the show and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Yes, we have about 100 episodes on our Patreon wall. Go to Patreon. We have two people, Margot. We have Jesse and Corella, who joined us. And Corella says that she feels like she's been our friend for like 10 years and that she hangs out with us. And like Margot and I feel that way about each other too. Well, we've been almost friends for 8 years now, but still, we feel like we've had all this knowledge in our lives, and now we have a microphone and we can use it, which is true. So just go to Patreon. There's a couple of affordable options. We're working on a yearly option. If money's tight, just, leave a review for us wherever you get your podcasts. We want to say hi to Good Pods. They had us on their list again. So all of you that checked us out on Good Pods and leaving nice reviews, thank you so much. It really does help.
Yeah, thank you so much. And welcome to our new Patreon followers. We really are so happy that you're here.
Yes.
Well, we have been dying to talk about this book and movie. I am so excited. I saw this in the movie theater when it came out, and I remember going and seeing it over and over and over again because there's so much to see. Let's talk about Raise the Red Lantern.
Yes, it started as a novel. It's Zhou Yimou is our director. That's of the movie, but it comes from Su Tong is our writer. He is based in China. He lives in Beijing now. He was born in 1963. He's a novelist. He writes a ton of short stories. This short story that he wrote in 1990 was called Wives and Concubines, which is you could find Raise the Red Lantern in a paperback, and that's just about how Margot and I got it. And it's a 100-page story. And if I tore through the story so quickly, and I actually said out loud many times, "Oh my God!" Like, it was so well written, but shocking. I didn't understand. I didn't know where it was going. It was really cool. It's very interesting because we'll talk about when we're talking more about the book about sexuality, but he is, I'm guessing, homosexual. He was writing at a time, certain parts of China, it's not okay to say that. Certain parts of China are not free. And China is a very volatile kind of place. It's a beautiful place. My mother's traveled around there many times. She loved it there, excuse me. But this is his work that we're talking about today, Wives and Concubines, and it takes place in the book in the 1930s China. In the movie, it's 1920s, but it's pretty much the same, but there are some key differences, I think.
There are a few differences. Thematically, they're very similar. It's a fabulous read. It is such an entertaining read. And having seen the movie a number of times, even I was like surprised. Certain, I remember the character dynamics are all pretty much the same. There's a few differences. It's a very, just here's where I have to admit, I am extremely ignorant of Chinese 20th century history in particular, and the way that kind of all unfolded. So this is a very, very armchair layperson's point of view of the history that's covered in the book. So, it's so interesting because he's writing at a time in the 1990s. I believe it was still, this is around, you have to think about the Tiananmen Square.
A year after.
Yes. So it was a very rocky time in terms of speech and criticizing the culture in any kind of a way. And so one thing that's kind of like when we talked about MASH and how MASH was a criticism of Vietnam, but under the guise of the Korean War, in a similar way, this, you can say that this book is a criticism of, around the 1990-ish era, Tiananmen era, under the guise of 1930s pre-Cultural Revolution China. So we have and the names are different, we should say too. The names, at least. Well, I'm saying that, but honestly, they might be exactly the same because we read an English translation. It might be that the name was just translated, and that's how you say that name in Chinese in the movie,
Yes.
So our main character is called Lotus in the book, and she is, again, it's 1930. She is a student. She is an educated young woman. This is, again, pre-communist China. It's sort of trying to figure out how it's participating in a 20th century landscape. And so, women are going to college and becoming professionals and becoming intellectuals. And she is well on her way to that kind of a life, at least that's what it seems like. And her father dies unexpectedly. And now she can no longer, they can no longer afford to send her through school. So that's really the predicament. In spite of what you just heard in the Siskel and Ebert thing, it's not like she's like, you know what? I think I'm going to be a concubine.
Yeah.
No, she really wants to be a student.
She does.
She's not happy about giving up being a student.
We also sometimes say, we should say now, like, we're not experts on books and movies for sure. Like, we're pals and we're film buffs and movie buffs and book lovers, but we're also not experts on Chinese culture. But after reading this story, I mean, first of all, it starts for me right off from her father goes bankrupt and he loses his business. And when he loses his business, he has no money and he dies by suicide. So the whole family then is thrown into chaos.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was raised a certain way and then all of a sudden she's penniless and she doesn't, and what she has is her beauty and her youth. That's what she's got going for her. And she decides, like, I'm going to take this opportunity and be this concubine, the fourth mistress of this man, because what else? It's like her best option. Yeah.
It is. She's lucky. She's pretty.
Yes.
She's not. And the amount, and she doesn't have a lot of education, but she has some. And the fact that she has some, it makes her sort of exotic, gives her like this kind of unknown element that makes her appealing to this wealthy man who is looking for his fourth wife. In the book, She marries this man. And again, it's a difficult decision that she makes. It's not like she just, again, it's not like Siskel and Ebert just described.
Well, we haven't played that yet. We'll play that in a minute.
I thought we just heard that. Okay, I'm sorry.
No. We're going to, when we play the trailer, we're going to play a Siskel and Ebert.
Oh,
review
yes,
instead.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So she goes to this, and this is another big difference between the book and the movie. The rich man's place where he lives, this kind of family compound that he has. Obviously, polygamy is totally fine. We are led to believe like this is a very archaic system. It's all about, this is the way we've always done it. This is the tradition of the going back countless generations. And the compound in the book is like a beautiful, lush, gardens and trees. And it looks like a paradise. Very different than the movie. Everything in the book is described, so beautifully. And you get the idea that it's very like, oh, this isn't such a bad place to land. I mean, how bad could this be?
Right.
But then we are quickly introduced to, again, this very archaic system, very feudal, roots system of polygamy that she is now having to live under.
Yeah, she walks there, and as soon as she arrives, she's got the idea, like, what I have going for me versus the other wives is I'm younger and I'm prettier. And so I'm going to use that. And so she immediately starts bossing around her maid to show her, like, I'm understanding my place, and I'm not going to show up ashamed or anything. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be treated a particular way. As we said, because she's educated, she's literate. So she's got that against other people. She also plays the flute. Like, she has her flute that's with her. That's sort of like her connection to her past. But she shows up. And also people say, like, and it could be my thing anyway, but they say, like, oh, she's with this old man and he's 50. He's not that old. I mean,
he's not that old.
No, but we don't see him in the movies. That's a big difference.
You don't. You get a lot more of him in the book than you do in the movie, for sure.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, in the book, he's not horrible to her. It's a horrible system. Let's be frank, but she cannot leave. No,
not on her own volition.
But it's not violent per se. At first, he is a product of this same archaic draconian system. He is also, he has a role that he is also fulfilling and from which he cannot escape. Another big difference in the book and the movie is that in the book, she is, again, she's trying to make the best of it, trying to find things to like about this situation. One of the things is that she really likes the garden, the grounds is really beautiful. She's walking around and she comes upon this well, and she immediately has this draw for her. She doesn't quite understand what it is about this well that is captivating her so much. And she starts asking questions about, like, what's the deal with that well? And, like, obviously nobody's using it. It seems pretty well abandoned. And it's not like people are using it to draw water every day or anything like that. But yet there it is. It seems kind of important. And people kind of don't want to talk about it at first. And then she learns that two wives of the house, not from a long time ago, previous generations, two wives from the house were accused of having illicit affairs, and as punishment were thrown into the well. And now she has, first of all, that's very eye-opening, because they're going, on the one hand, they're like, oh, don't worry, it was a long time ago. But on the other hand, they're like, this is the way we do everything. We've always done it since a long time ago, and it's never changed. So It's very clear, okay, this is the system I live under now.
Right. And if you
step out of line, they push you in a well.
Right. And he's under this, I don't want to sound too sympathetic to him because he's oppressing people, but at the same time, he's oppressed as well because, well, he has to support all these people. So he has to have all this money.
It's a weird system.
It's a very strange system. I mean, it reminds me of, what was that show about Mormonism? And it was Bill, Bill Pullman?
Oh, yes. With Chloe Sevigny.
Yes, where he had all these wives, and
Love, Big Love.
Big Love. And the thing was, is that people are like, oh, you must envy this guy, all, like these three beautiful women as your wives. And it was like, no, it was a lot of work. It was draining on his finances. It was emotionally draining. This man is going through that. I mean, he has a son about the age of Lotus, and she's attracted to him. But it turns out he's probably homosexual. He has, they said he has a fear of women. And so sometimes when he's intimate, he can't do what he wants to do. And so he says to her, well, just face the wall. And then she's like, what are you talking about? Because she's inexperienced. And so she behaves badly for him. And then the other women find out, like, oh, the young pretty one's not kind of hot to trot, is she? She doesn't know so much, does she? And so there's sort of this intrigue, like, what is his deal? Some of the women, when she gets her period, she gets really upset because, like, it's like Henry VIII. Like, you better be pregnant soon.
All your power is in having boys, really. Yep. And girls to a lesser extent, but really boys.
Yeah.
Because if you're having girls, like, at least they know you're fertile. So, there's a chance you could have a boy. So let's talk about the other three wives. So the first wife is, of course, the first wife. She's the same age as the husband. So ancient at 50.
Yes.
No longer childbearing, and therefore she's like a grandmother figure. I can't even say like a mother figure. She is like this dowager grandmotherly position in the home. She has a son. So the eldest son is her son. So she has power, even though she is no longer an object of desire of the husband. The fact that she has the eldest son means that she has power that the other three will never have. Mm-hmm. Then you have the second one who has a daughter, the second wife. I forget what her name is. Coral? Is Coral the third one? There's Coral.
Cloud is the second one. Coral is the third one.
Cloud.
Yes.
Okay, so Cloud is the second one. Cloud has a daughter. And Cloud at first is very welcoming to Lotus. The fourth wife is like, let's be buds. I hear you, sister. I know what it's like. It must be hard. And don't worry, you got a friend in me. I'll be your pal. I'll be your ride or die. Then the third wife is a beautiful former opera singer. Mm-hmm. And that's a very interesting theme as well, because kind of like Lotus, she also has an unconventional past, 20th century past. So she was, in the theater, she was famous. People were very intrigued by her fame and her beauty and her talent. And yet, just like Lotus, in terms of her future, that kind of didn't amount to much because there really wasn't that much mapped out for women. Even though things were changing, at the end of the day, your future is what it was generations and generations and generations. So here she is, and she is openly hostile to Lotus, like right from the get-go. She starts pulling shenanigans, and she's like a drama queen. She sings to taunt, taunt Lotus, and she's just openly catty with her and doesn't make any effort to hide the fact that she's not thrilled that there's a new girl in the compound. And so there we are. So Lotus is trying to figure out like what is her place in all of this. She is, she's a teenager. So she's having to sleep with this 50-year-old man, and she's facing that this is like her life from now on. This is how it's going to go. And maybe she'll be lucky enough to bear a son, and that's like the best possible outcome for her. Now I know that if I even like speak out a turn, I might be pushed in a well.
No, it's not like that you get demoted to servant. You're just gone because he can't take care. He can only take care of so many servants. Like that's the whole thing. And some of the servants want to be a wife because I get it. You don't want to wash feet your whole life, but
it paints a very harsh picture of what that life is like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then her name is Swallow. And this, at one point, Lotus gets a doll. She feels a stabbing pain in her chest. And then she sees there's a doll and it had pinpricks in it. And then it had Lotus written on it. And she's like, well, who else here knows how to write? And
she realizes at first she's mad at the servant, understandably, for keeping this, cursing her. And then she realizes, well, hang on a minute. my servant can't read or write. So how did my name get written on this doll? That means there's only like a handful of people who could do that.
Right. And so she's cursing her.
Yeah. So she kind of, I don't think she beats her, but she gets it out of the servant that she assumes that it's the third wife, the opera singer, who's so mean to her. But no,
it's the second.
Turns out the second one is the sneaky snake in the grass.
Cloud is a sneaky one.
It's very interesting because Lotus she has a little bit of education, but she's super young. You know, we don't make awesome decisions when we're 19.
We've talked
You just
about
don't.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's trying to like, how do I get back at this woman? What can I do? And so she pretends to be pregnant, which is the one thing that you can do. She doesn't think it through.
Right, because at some point...
very far.
No, and that's like the whole plot of Baby Mama, by the way, which is Tina Fey. And like, spoiler, don't watch this movie, but Amy Poehler pretends to be pregnant for Tina Fey as a surrogate. I'm like, okay, what's the long-term... She's got... And also, we should say, like, her mental health is suffering under all these circumstances. She's dealing with the death of her family.
We see it degrade, yes, throughout the book.
And she's terrified, and she's superstitious. She has one romantic encounter with this man. They have several interludes where they're in the room, but he doesn't really kind of go for it, and he's kind of testing her out. And then he tries to have sex with her, and it doesn't. Let's just say it just doesn't work for either one of them. And then she's like, well, and she cries and she's upset because she's just a kid and she doesn't know how to, she doesn't know to say like, it's okay. You're just tired. Don't worry. Like she gets upset and he gets upset at her, and then he's embarrassed. And who's this woman, challenging my manhood? And I have a son that's attracted to her. I could tell he's attracted to her. And he knows that the doctor that he hires is in on the shenanigans with the women as well, because he likes a couple of them. It's this whole thing. But it's told in, like I said, 100 pages. Like, things happen on every page.
And it's told very well.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Poor Lotus.
Yes.
She has...
Bless her heart.
She has gotten herself into, through no fault of her own, she's ended up in this very awful situation. And as we would say today, she has no tools. So ultimately, it's her birthday. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. So she asks her servant, her new servant now, we'll talk about that when we talk about the movie, but she asks her new servant to bring her some wine. And we're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Because nobody's asked for wine at any point in this story so far until now. So it's very jarring when she asks for wine and she says, it's my birthday. And so the servant's like, oh, great. Well, let me get you that wine. And she gets drunk, very sloppy, very mouthy.
We call it loudmouth sooth in my family.
And she lets slip. First of all, she confronts the son. Like, what do you do? Why are we pretending that we're not attracted to each other, kind of thing? And she also lets slip as she gets really drunk. She also lets slip that she knows that the third wife is having an affair with the doctor. And the second wife hears this, the second wife who pretends to be nice, but is really the worst one. And she tips off the husband, because this is her power move, because she only has a daughter, right? So she's always scheming. She tips off the father. They go and they find the third wife, or at least they say they find the third wife in bed with the doctor, like super bad situation. Push her down the well. Lotus, the next day when she's sober, realizes what happened, feels very responsible. And she already feels responsible for the death of the first servant that she had, again, which we'll talk about in a little bit. She has a conscience.
Yeah.
And she does have some complicity, but really what's at fault is this awful system. And her guilt really is her breaking point. And she's just never, ever, ever the same after that. And so now the master of the manor is down 2 wives, one to mental illness and one to murder, one that he killed. And so, of course, he has to get a new wife. And at the end, he's married now a 5th wife, who's called the 5th wife. I guess we're going to just keep the number system going.
Yeah.
Our poor Lotus is just beyond all help. At least there's just nothing available to help her, as there was never anything available to help her, nothing in the way of support for her ever, ever, ever. And this is the result, is that she is just completely lost. At the end is a very sad ending. That's the book.
Yeah, it's a sad story. It goes in all kinds
It's gorgeous.
but it's beautiful. And there's 3. I didn't read the other stories. I will get to. This is one of the few books like I'll keep. I'll definitely keep this on my shelf because I want to go back and visit it. It's beautiful. It's an interesting time period. I just super enjoyed it, and I get why somebody was like, "Well, we have to make a movie out of this."
Definitely. Yeah. It's very cinematic. I mean, it's unbelievable how short this story is.
Yeah.
It's sweeping and you really can picture it. You really can visualize all of it. So yeah, of course it's going to be a movie, even in China.
Even in China. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to break from this. We were mentioned this before. Normally we play the trailer, but the trailer is all musical here. And so when we have it just be music, we try to figure something else. So we're going to play a clip, and it's from 1992, and it's Siskel and Ebert reviewing this film. And they have quite an interesting viewpoint. They both like it, by the way. It's a thumbs up for both of them. I think that's why even I saw the movie, because they talked about it. And whenever they gave a big thumbs up, I was like, oh, I got to check that out then. So we're going to talk about that. We'll play the clip, and then we'll get right into the movie. And the movie was changed from the title from Wives and Concubines to Raise the Red Lantern.
Oh, and we should say before we break that red lanterns, like, barely mentioned, I don't know if at all, in the book. So that's a device of the movie. So enjoy, Mr. Siskel and Mr. Ebert.
One of the most visually beautiful films I've seen this year has been nominated for an Academy Award as Best Foreign Film. It's from China. It's named Raise the Red Lantern, and it was directed by China's best-known filmmaker, Zhang Yimou, who also directed last year's Oscar nominee, Judo. Once again, his subject is the relationship between a young woman and a rich older man who has essentially purchased her with his economic power. The movie takes place inside the house of the rich old man, who has 4 wives, and the title comes from the fact that every evening a servant raises a red lantern in front of the quarters of the wife that the man plans to spend the night with. The movie stars Gong Li as the beautiful young 4th wife who discovers that life in this house is a hotbed of sexual politics.
怎么样？点灯捶脚，到这会儿你觉出点意思来了吗？再过些天呢，就更离不了喽。谁呀？什么事儿？
三姐又叫你了。你该过去了。
The camera suggests the elegance of the physical comforts in the house at the same time that the dialogue suggests that it is a forlorn prison.
飞普，飞普，你给我下来！
我母亲叫我有事儿，那我先走。
This is the 3rd movie by Zhang Yimou that I've seen. Red Sorghum was about a young woman purchased by a rich old vineyard owner. Judo was about the young bride of a rich man who dyed textiles. And now we get this film in which the rich husband is off screen almost altogether, and the director focuses on what is probably his real obsessive subject, the feelings of women who are the victims of men, tradition, and money. This is a subtle, elegant, and moving film about an educated woman who has her whole life ahead of her, but decides to sell herself to the old man, and then her life is limited by the 4 walls of his house. It's a film that can be read as an angry parable and not just about China.
Well, I like the picture, too. The only thing I quarrel with you on is the use of the word subtle. I think it's really very clear what this film is about, and I think that it's more than just the dialogue that shows that this is a prison. I think the overhead shots that we get of the whole compound this Titan operates is one of like a prison very much. And I think that
that's not the part that I thought was subtle.
Okay.
I thought the part that was subtle had to do with the fact that the 4 women,
yes,
first of all, they all hate the man, and yet they all pretend they like him in order to get one up on each other. And then their servants are also part of the game. And the doctor who comes in is giving some of them medical excuses and so forth. And the jockeying that goes on, I think, is very quiet and interesting.
Well, I think that this is typically what happens when you enslave people, is that they become their own worst enemies, and they accept the order, and then they bicker among themselves to be a better slave than a worse slave. And it's a terrible trap that these people are in. I think the film shows it quite clearly, and I'm sure it's an explosive film in China.
This movie debuts at the Venice Film Festival and does very well. As I said, it's Zhang Yimou, who is our director. Beautifully directed. This film, I have to tell you, this film is gorgeous. The cinematography, the
It's
sound
breathtaking.
design, the costumes. Gong Li is our lead.
Okay, Gong Li is the unsung badass
Yep.
of the cinema globe. She can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
If she in it, I'm watching it. I
Yeah.
love her. And the opening of this movie with that tight shot on her face. Oh, nobody does a close up like Gong Li. She gives you all of the exposition. She barely says like 3 sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives you the entire story right there. You completely get it, what
Yeah.
happened. Oh, I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it.
It's incredible. So they set it into the 1920s, and this is the warlord era, 1960 to 1928. Like I said, I'm not an expert on Chinese history, but she shows up and she looks very young, and she's got just the one bag, and she looks very tired. And same thing as we said before, she shows up and she immediately realizes, like, I need to assert myself if I'm going to survive this. And so she's very bossy and she's very demanding, as she should be, because that's how you're going to make it. You have to prove yourself. So there are other women. The women in this movie, the casting is incredible.
It's all about the women. It's so you barely see the men.
Yeah.
You know, the husband, who is the guy in charge, who is the guy calling the shots, he's almost never even in the frame.
He's not, and that's why it was funny to me when we listened to Siskel and Ebert, because they both describe him as an old man, and I'm like, well, he's probably as old as you both are. I mean, but
No, I think he's younger than them.
He's probably even younger at this
And
point.
how do you know? You don't even see him.
you don't see him, and which is a smart choice. These are some really smart choices that they make. Like what? Because what does it matter what he looks like? It's really about the women and how they're working with one another in this system. So Gong Li plays a woman. Her name is Song Lian. And then there's, hey, I'm so sorry if I butcher the names. Please forgive me. Meishan is the third mistress by Hei Safel, who's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, she's so pretty. Her performance, everybody's, all the women are so good. They're so good.
She's the opera singer. And there's a scene, the compound in the movie, they make it look dark and scary, like the Godfather.
It's all stone. I don't think you ever even see a tree.
No, there's no branches.
It's
there's no
stone
weather.
and snow. And that's it.
It's like a real bummer. And it's a great choice because, yeah, sure, you got a room to yourself. Sure, it's all big and everything's taken care of. But what do you look at every day? Concrete and gray sky.
And where are you going?
Where are you going? Nowhere. There's this scene. I love this scene where Hei Safei, she plays Meishan, sings opera. And because of the acoustics, it just bounces around. And you could tell she has a beautiful, beautiful voice. Song Lian, kind of stops her like, hey, I know what you're doing. You're trying to show off like how clever you are. But Meishan does this thing where she just snaps the robe. Like she takes the robe off of her and just snaps it on her arm and walks away. Like, you don't threaten me. I'm onto you. I will be here long after you're gone. Like, it's just...
You're cute.
You're adorable. Excuse me. I've got a thing to run here. the husband, I don't think they have it's not a sexy movie. I thought for some reason it was going to be
No, it's not at all.
No.
Which is a choice,
Right, another choice.
They could easily have like Miramaxed it up, but they don't.
It's a Samuel Goldman film, I should mention. Yes.
Yes, it's a Samuel Goldman.
It would have been. She'd be topless half the time.
But it's, it is about what these women, the situation that they're in and how are they navigating it.
Right.
And, and they're navigating in really the only way that they can. And that's like, crabs in a bucket. They're climbing over each other, for what? To have a son,
And that's all they can offer. And we meet them and we get more of an idea of like what their days are like. And it's like the first wife gets to decide when they're having breakfast, when they're having tea, when they're doing things. And then the order goes down the line. And the servant that's with Song Leon hates her from the beginning and wants her to be and wants to get rid of her. And she wants to take her place. And what in the movie, the Raise the Red Lantern is they put the lantern in the spot where he's going to go for the night. And if he shows up quite often at your place, then you're in the power position. And her servant is, she has all these lanterns in her room. Like she's dreaming of a time.
Like the ones that are no longer usable. She's got them like patched up in her room. It's so sad.
Because that's what she wants. Like, because for her, that's better than giving you foot massages every day.
So the wives who are in prison, I mean, these women are in prison, and yet that is like the beautiful dream of this little maid that that Gong Li has in the film. That woman's performance, the maid.
It's what's her name? I'm going to look for it. Yeah, the young
so
servant, Kong Lin. She plays Yaner. Yaner is how she.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yaner's up to some stuff in this movie that gets Song Leon, upset. I do like the scenes with her and the son. You could tell they have some chemistry going there. And also, I love this movie's the sound design, like the way sound is used.
The sound is used in this it's brilliant.
Like
the place is so quiet.
Yes,
because it's stone. It's nothing but stone.
And then
snow.
And they're like, hey, do you want a foot massage? Yeah, okay.
Sure.
And it
Right.
just sounds
like everybody knows who's getting the foot massage.
And it doesn't sound pleasant or relaxing.
And how long it takes. It sounds terrible.
以前的四太太脑子有毛病了。
I was like, oh, not that thing again. It sounds like crickets or something. Just like, But that's it. That's the life that they choose. That's the life that they're stuck with. I think it's wrong to make I think a prisoner is a better allegory but a better description than enslaved person. I think that those are two.
Yeah, because
things.
they are two different things. They're very different things. It's a system. It's an old system. Not that. I mean, look, we're talking to you from the United States,
right?
Not that wasn't a system too, but it is different. It's not the same. There's thousands of years of history. It's just different. I think it's what's the word? It's painting with too broad a brush to. But okay, Siskel and Ebert. You're talking 30 years ago, and.
Oh, exactly,
we have a limited vocabulary for talking about these things. Oh, so we don't have the lush gardens and the trees that we have in the book. It's all stone. Instead of our well, we have this weird little shack on the rooftop.
Right.
So are you familiar with the myth of Bluebeard? Do you know them?
I remember, but no, I don't. We went there when I was a kid.
So there's a lot of, and I didn't see it in any of the analysis. Like nobody's talking about Bluebeard when they're analyzing this film, which I find very odd. But so I'll give you the broad strokes. So Bluebeard, the pirate, he shows up at this. I don't remember. He's like a merchant. It's almost always a merchant, right? And the merchant has this beautiful daughter, and he says, I'll marry your daughter and she'll live in my beautiful, castle and whatever. So he gives her this lavish lifestyle, and he says to her, you can, I'm so honored that you married me, and the old ugly pirate like me. And, you can have the run of the place. You are in charge. You can have anything you could possibly want, anything money can buy. I only ask that you don't go into this one room. Just stay out. I've got my one secret room. That's my room.
My man
Don't
cave.
go there. That's my man cave. It is off limits, but everything else is yours. You go anywhere else you want to go, and this is your place, except for that one little room. And so, of course, her, she's left alone a lot. So her curiosity gets the better of her. Eventually, she goes through all these machinations, like getting the key. That it's a whole like myth. Anyway, long story short, spoiler alert, she gets into the room. It is packed with the bodies of his other wives.
Oh! Is this a true story or just a fable?
No.
Okay.
No. It's a myth. I think.
We used to go to Virginia a lot when I was a kid, and they have a lot of captain and pirate stories. And I think Blackbeard is one they talk about a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very that. So there's this stone house and little shack, like I said, shed, if you will, on the roof. And that everybody can see, like all the women can sort of see this. So it's like this ever-present little thing that's always kind of just over there beyond the, over there. And so she starts asking, like, so what's that place over there? And they're like, oh, no. You don't ever want to, don't ask about that. You don't want to know about that. And so she keeps asking and she keeps asking, just like the well in the book. They go, oh, well, a long time ago, a lot. Don't worry about it because it's so long ago. But even though we are completely married to all of the traditions from that time, you don't need to worry about it. But there were two wives who had illicit affairs, and they were both hanged in that little house there. So that's all. I mean, that's all that happened there. Don't worry about it. Nothing to worry about. So that's instead of the well, which makes a lot of. I really liked the device of that. Although the well passages in the book are beautifully written, just cinematically to have that little thing like always off in the corner, and you're always kind of aware that it's there, and we're still living under that same system that hanged those women that were in there. Don't forget that. So I really liked that choice. I thought it was a really, really good choice for the movie.
The things that happen in the book that are similar are the same there. We don't have the sex scene, but we do have a scene where everything's just awkward every time she's with him. He's not exactly this sexual,
He's not that deft. No.
No, he doesn't
For
have
someone
any
with
game.
4 wives.
Yeah, someone with a lot of money and 4 wives, he has no game. And it's always awkward with them. And she's young and she's like so innocent, and all these things are happening around her, and she's trying to make sense of it. And she gets very drunk on her 20th birthday, and like I said, has a bit too much loudmouth soup and just starts vomiting all of her issues. It gets caught that the doctor's having an affair with one of the mistresses. That woman is taken away. She is traumatized by this. She feels terribly guilty because she doesn't want anyone to get killed. She just wants to leave, but she knows she can't leave. She has no money. Where is she going to go? And so this was her only chance. So then she becomes suicidal. And this is sort of like where the movie kind of ends. She's just wandering around, and in her head, they show her she's in her old uniform the day that she arrived. Oh, it's only been a year, by the way. But
it's been a year.
1 year.
This is what this system does to you in a year.
Right. If you have a heart, if you have joy, if you have any curiosity, like I said, she knew how to read and write. She was on the path to like doing something else with her life, and that's just she's gone insane.
Right. But here's the thing: was she though?
Or was she dead?
Was she on the path? No. Because what if she had stayed in school? What would have happened to her? You know what would have happened to her? The same thing. Because the Cultural Revolution is coming.
That's true.
Right? So she still would have ended up in a prison. saw a really interesting analysis. I don't know if you saw it by this other director of this movie. And he is talking about how this movie is an allegory for the Cultural Revolution, and he breaks it all down. And yeah, it's really interesting.
We should post that in the Facebook group.
Yeah, because he knows more. He knows a lot more about this history than either of us.
Right. Yes. Our apologies for that.
And yeah, and he does. I won't attempt to like rebuild his very interesting case, but I mean, it's very compelling. I think he talks about like how all of the different factions of Chinese society are represented in this movie, and how the fate that befalls them is exactly the fate that befell them during the Cultural Revolution. Of course, what's his name? Yimou, the filmmaker.
Yes.
He cannot openly criticize.
No.
Even the Cultural Revolution that is decades before at this point, he hadn't even come close to criticizing it, but he's using this story to, talk about, have a conversation about what happened, how people were used, how people, how systems were presented as new when they were actually super old, and oppressive, and really, the impact on women in particular, and broadly on women, and in particular, like educated women and country women and, mothers and daughters. And it's a really, really interesting case, because it's true, and this is true of the book as well, that, you read about her, even though it's a little bit later, you read about her and she's educated and, it's a shame that this awful thing happens. It's beyond her control. She ends up having to marry this guy, but if she hadn't, the exact same fate awaited her. Mm-hmm. The exact same thing. In fact, even arguably worse.
Yeah.
She might have been, it might have been years and years of torture and imprisonment. Yeah, it's really fat. Both of the book and the movie are just, again, just like you just get goosebumps when you start looking at it through that lens. It's very chilling. But this movie, come on. First of all, just the red lanterns alone. Like, I got to tell you, because I saw it in the movie theater. When those red lanterns first appear on screen, like the whole movie theater is glowing red. It's captivating. And she's so beautiful. I mean, she is the, like, what I love about Gong Li is she is the best, like, face actor I've ever seen. She says so little, and she's communicating so much.
Yes.
Where she's just sitting there. She's just sitting there on the edge of the bed, and you're like, ah! You're so just on the edge of your seat. Yeah, man. It's such a great movie. It's such a great movie. I just love this. I'm so glad that we did this movie this week. And,
yes.
But I'm so glad to have an opportunity to read the book. But which did you think? Well, first of all, what we didn't talk about was that the maid, a little bit about what happens to her. The maid, so Lotus's maid, and this is true in the book and in the movie. The Lotus's maid, in the movie, it's more dramatic because, as we said, she has these red lanterns that she's patched up and put in her little cell. I mean, it's a cell. Gong Li's character, Song Yan, is furious. I mean, she's just furious in general. You would be, right? And she doesn't know where to lash out. She can't lash out at her husband because guess who's going to hang in the shed next, right? She can't even lash out so much at the other wives because they have more power than she does. She has to, it's like kicking the dog. She has to, she's punching down. The only place where she can let her rage safely out, unfortunately, is on this poor maid. So she outs the maid. She exposes the maid for having because it's a big no-no to have these lanterns.
Yeah.
They have a very specific purpose that we've had for generations and generations, and certainly no maid is allowed to have them in her little cell. So she exposes the maid. Although the other wives disagree with that choice, know that it's unfair, know exactly what's up, know that like she can only express rage at the maid. She can't do anything. It's literally the only thing she can do. And they feel sorry for the maid. Nevertheless, we have rules are rules.
Yeah.
And so the rules are that the maid has to have the lanterns burned in front of her and has to sit there until she apologizes, which is the most lenient kind of, they could have kicked her out, in which case she really would have just starved. So they give her, they try to help her as much as possible. Okay, listen, we've got these rules, but if you apologize, you'll be okay. And the maid is like, no way. And it's winter and she's outside in the snow for days and days and days. And she collapses and dies. So the fourth wife, Song Nan, knows that she is responsible for this. She already feels, she's like, oh man, what did I do? What did I do? And that's really I think that's really the reason that she gets drunk, is that that's really what drives her to that episode. And then it gets even worse because she gets drunk and mouthy, and then it gets real bad. And I think that the way that they do that scene in the movie, it's much more violent. It's much longer scene of them going and getting the third wife, and she's gagged and there she's struggling, and it's awful.
It's so upsetting.
It's very, very
and she's
upsetting.
Screaming on her way to her execution, and
Yes.
the voices it's everywhere. Yeah, I mean, God, both book versus movie. I know the book made me yell out loud, oh my God, a number of times.
Me too.
I was totally absorbed. I loved it.
Absolutely.
And the movie does as well. And the movie is a visual feast, and it sounds great, and the music is beautiful. The cinematography is bar none. I mean, I just
you would think, you have to remember with this movie, it entirely, except for the very first scene again, where that tight shot of her. You are in this one place. You are in this one little stone compound for the entire thing, which could get boring very quickly. It is never boring at all.
No.
It's just gets more and more and more intense. And that's all down to the cinematography. And I think the choice of having, instead of the well, they could have had a well, but the fact that it's this, this shack that's up high, then the symbolism of that, instead of being subterranean, it's the opposite. It's way up high, closer to the heavens. And, I think there's a big difference between going to a well for the fourth wife who feels responsible. There's a big difference between going to the well that your friend, because at the end they're friends by the time, and she betrays her friend is really what happens. Going to this well that your friend was pushed into versus walking in on the actual scene and her, of the violence, and she is still there. It's much more violent, even though we don't ever see it. We only see, it's all off in the distance. We see her go in, we hear her scream. We don't see the scene. Your brain has to kind of fill in those details, but it's much, much more violent than even in the book, which is already quite violent. Much more brutal. Yeah. Which I think the whole story altogether is much more brutal in the movie than it is in the book. And oddly, in that it's more quiet, in that it's more subtle, it's more quiet, it's more gentle. And so it's all the more dangerous. So I would give it to the movie.
I'm giving it the slight
although
advantage.
This book is gorgeous.
It's definitely read it. I mean, if you've seen the film before, please read it. I was just looking before, where you were talking. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film from just a dozen different film festivals. It won several of them. It was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film in 1992, but it didn't win. So I'm curious about what's the one that won.
It's Mediterraneo.
I don't even know
which
that
is
one.
It's a nice movie. I saw this too in the movie theater. It's good, but it doesn't even come close to this movie. I don't understand.
Yeah, because I'm seeing on these other lists, it's listed on top, 1,000 movies to see before you die, 100 best foreign language films of the 1990s. I mean, just there's all these, one of the best. It's just fantastic. And he's a fabulous...
I'm baffled.
I am baffled. I know. That's what I had to find out. I forgot to look it up, and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My phone
Mediterraneo, I mean, it's fine. It's pretty, but this is not even close.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
No.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to the movie as well. Because it should have won for Best Foreign Film at the Academy Awards. Are you kidding me?
Absolutely, it should have.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Okay, so let's talk about what we're doing next.
I'm really excited about this. We're going to be we found out that Mulan is a story that's based on a poem. So we're going to do Mulan next, and we'll decide. There's the live action version and the animated. I think the live action version has Gong Li in it.
does.
Oh, so I want to see
I've
it.
never seen it, but I know that it does.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, because I think that would be interesting to see her in another film. And then we're going to do the Joy Luck Club. That's happening. That'll be the second one that we're doing, the third one that we're doing this month. I'm really excited. Amy Tan, beautiful book, beautiful.
I know.
movie.
I haven't read it. We were saying we haven't read it for a long time. We've both read it
30
before,
years.
but
Yeah.
it's been a long time. And I remember loving this movie too. So, and it'll be in English. So
Yes.
or at least part of it. So that'll be good. And so, Margot, where can people find you on the internet?
You could find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Twitter and Instagram, on TikTok. On TikTok, Margot. TikTok at Margot Donahue, and my site is brooklynfitchick.com. Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. Yes, even on TikTok, although I am never there. I don't even have the app on my phone. I just snagged the handle so nobody else would take it.
You might get into it. You never know.
I know. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that I'll get into it.
It's a time suck. Okay, everybody, next episode is dropping soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.